Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a pretty hot button issue in the homeschooling community, and it's something that different people have different opinions on, and so it's a question that I'm going to answer for you today with my point of view on it. And that question is cyberschooling really homeschooling? So when you ask that question, I think that it can be looked at in different ways. If you look at that question on the most basic level, I would say that yes, cyberschooling is homeschooling because a child is at home doing their school. So as I said, it's something that is as basic as you can get. They're at home, their mother is, right there, or their father is there to help them with their schoolwork if they need it. And so, yeah, on that level, cyberschooling could be considered homeschooling. But if you look at it on two other levels, such as technically and legally, I would say that cyberschooling is not considered homeschooling. And I know this is an issue that comes up a lot, like in homeschool groups. It comes up in just like homeschool circles, homeschool moms who know each other. It comes up online a lot. And I know that there are even some homeschool groups that don't allow people who cyberschool into their homeschool groups. And I'm going to explain to you today why it is that there are pretty many homeschoolers who do not consider cyberschooling to be homeschooling. So first of all, I'll just talk about it technically speaking. Now, first of all, I'm just going to give you the disclaimer that I have never personally cyberschooled my children. When I pulled my kids out of school, I went right into homeschooling. So this isn't something that I have personal experience with. So when I talk about cyberschooling today, it's going to be things that I've learned from talking to people who have done cyberschooling. So the reason that cyberscholing is not technically homeschooling is because cyberschoolers still have to follow a certain curriculum that has been assigned to them by someone other than their parent. Typically, it's through the school district. A lot of times you'll hear of people doing public school online, or sometimes you'll hear of cyber charter schools. But what it is that they will have an outside agent give them the curriculum that the kids have to do, and the parents don't really have much say over it. Now, sometimes they might be given a choice of taking certain classes. I think that different cyber schools work different ways. But on the whole, with homeschooling, the parents, they are the ones who make the ultimate decision with everything, with all of the curriculum. All of that is the parents' responsibility, and they do not have to answer to an outside agent over what they choose, and they don't have to ask permission to use anything. So that's first of all. Second of all, I know that with cyber schoolers, they do have to, at least from the cyber schoolers that I have talked to, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if they're not all like this, but I know that excuse me, cyber schoolers will often have to log on to their computer for a certain number of hours, for a certain number of days. I'm not really sure how that works, but I do know that I've spoken to several cyber schoolers who have had issues with that, because the first one was actually my old homeschool evaluator. She was an English teacher at a Christian school, and she was cyberschooling her son who was in kindergarten. And she was telling me at one of our evaluations how they had just moved and she was not able to find her modem, so her son was not able to sign on to his kindergarten cyber school for like maybe a week or two, and she actually got a truancy letter in the mail. And the same thing goes with a friend of mine at church who was cyberschooling. The same thing happened to her. She was not able to have her child log on. I don't remember if they were having technical issues or whatever, but she was not able to have her son log on. And again, they got that truancy letter from the school district. And that's a difference in homeschooling. In homeschooling, yes, different states have different homeschool laws. Like in Pennsylvania, we have to homeschool our kids for 180 days out of the year, or at least 180 days out of the year. But what constitutes a homeschool day to a homeschool parent is entirely up to them. See, if you ask me, kids who are homeschooled are learning every day. So to us, every single day is a homeschool day, because if your child is awake, they're learning. And as a homeschool mom, I have that liberty to say, hey, you know what? My kids did learn so much today through going to the park and playing with their Legos and reading this book and watching this animal documentary, that, yeah, I'm going to count this as a school day. And cyberschoolers really don't have that liberty. There are certain requirements that they have to follow. And I also know that they do sometimes have to fill out, the students have actual physical paperwork that they have to do sometimes. Again, I'm not sure if it's all cyber schools, but the ones that I have spoken to, they will actually have packets of papers that they also have to complete, and then they have to be mailed out to someone. I don't know if it's weekly or how that works, but again, it's all about the parents of a cyber school student are not the ones that are in charge of their education. They are handing it off still to someone else. And I've got to say that a lot of times that I certainly consider cyberschooling to be a step up from the public education setting, just because you've gotten your kids out of that potentially volatile situation, the way things have been lately. Your kids are safe in your house. So yes, cyberschooling is definitely a step up from the public education setting. But a lot of times, if your child is doing, public school at home, or I don't remember what they call it, but what ends up happening is they're still getting some of that curriculum that a lot of homeschoolers find to be objectionable. And again, it's because parents of cyberschoolers, they don't get to choose that curriculum. It's just given to them. I'm just trying to think of what else there is. So yeah, so when it comes to the packets of papers and everything, as homeschooling parents, we don't have to hand that off to people every single week. Now again, different states have different laws. In Pennsylvania, we do have to show a few samples to our evaluator at the end of the year to show that our kids have made progress. But again, we choose what samples are given, and we give it to the evaluator, and she will look at it and interview our students. But it's not like we have this work given to us and someone says to us, your child has to do page 2 this assignment and then page 10 of this one, and then you need to put it in an envelope and mail it to us. It doesn't work that way. Again, homeschooling parents are just, they're the ones that are in charge of the work that gets done in the homeschool. So they're not answering to anyone else when it comes to that, except for, like evaluation time and those sorts of things. But really, it is much, the evaluators are much more hands-off than what would happen with a cyber school, where you're literally, you must hand that in by a certain period all the time, mail it in, however it is that they do it. Sorry, I keep coughing. I just got over being sick. So anyway, I just want to make sure that I covered everything. Oh, another thing with technically speaking is that, and I'm not sure if this really falls under technically speaking, but what I do have to say is that cyber schoolers that I have spoken to, they say that their child usually has to end up spending about 4 to 5 hours on the computer every day. And that is not something that is really typical in a homeschool. Now, yeah, there are some homeschoolers who use a lot of online classes, so their child might be sitting in front of the computer a lot. But again, in a homeschool, it usually doesn't take that long, especially with younger kids. And it's much, I think that it's a lot easier for kids to learn an environment when they can learn in different ways. And sometimes sitting in front of a computer all day is really hard for kids. Now, some kids might enjoy it. I'm not going to say that they don't, but I would say for the most part, and even I'm going to add right now that every single cyber schooler that I've ever met, now this is just me, but every person I've ever met who has cyber schooled has eventually changed to homeschooling. Everyone, without fail. So a lot of times cyber schooling is a nice step out of the public education system. It might be like, a nice like cushion for parents who maybe aren't very confident in their skill to teach their kids, so it's just like a stepping stone to homeschooling. So if it would work for someone, then I would say yes, absolutely do that. But that's how it has been in my experience, that everyone that I've known who has cyber schooled, they have ended up putting their kids either back in school actually, but most of them have ended up doing homeschooling. And the reason is because they said that cyberschooling them was just way too much work, and their kids weren't enjoying spending that much time in front of the computer. So anyway, so now we're going to get on to legally speaking. Legally, cyberschooling is not homeschooling, because cyberschoolers, by law, they are considered public school students. They have to follow all of the laws that come with the public schools, and that includes like standardized tests and all. And again, I haven't cyber schooled, but I do know that standardized tests is one of those things. Like in Pennsylvania, as in every state, standardized tests are like a big thing. In Pennsylvania, it's the PSSAs, and then there are also something called the Keystone tests, which I think they just take in high school. So in Pennsylvania, at least, cyber schoolers still must take those standardized tests every single year, and they must take the Keystone tests. And I do have to add that the PSSAs in Pennsylvania, they take a couple weeks for kids to do them. It's not like a once and done thing. This is like really long and drawn out, and I know that cyber schoolers do have to do that in Pennsylvania. Whereas homeschool students actually do not fall under the public school laws. They actually fall under the homeschool laws, which are different. So again, it varies from state to state, but for example, in Pennsylvania, homeschool students only have to take standardized tests in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade. Only the evaluator sees the results, no one else, and they do not have to take the Keystones. So those are just some differences between cyberschooling and homeschooling. And I'm just going to add that, again, I know that this is a big issue for some people, and I know that a lot of times cyberschoolers, they get upset when people are telling them that they're not really homeschoolers and everything. But the thing is that if you're cyberschooling your child, you are definitely doing something good for your child. You're definitely trying to get them out of a situation that might not be good for them. So I would just say good for you if you are cyberschooling or if you are homeschooling. You're doing this for your kids, and you're doing a great job. I would point out to you though that from me talking to my friends who had cyberschooled, what I would tell you is that I would, after a while, after you maybe get comfortable, or maybe even straight away if you're just pulling your child right out of school, I really, really want you to look into homeschooling, because there is just so much more freedom in it. You don't have to answer to people all the time. And that was the thing. When my kids were in school, I felt like a secondary parent. I felt like I was always answering to someone for my own children. And I think that still happens a lot with cyber schools. I think a lot of cyber school parents still feel like those secondary parents. They still feel like they're answering to other people for their kids. And you don't have that in a homeschool environment. You have the liberty, to pick your own curriculum, choose when, where, and how you're going to homeschool, what days you're going to homeschool. I just cannot reiterate to you enough the freedoms that come with it. So, and that actually leads into the next point that I wanted to make is why a lot of times homeschool parents don't really like it when cyber school is considered homeschool. And I know that one of the reasons is because of what I was just talking about. A lot of times cyberschooling has become so popular that people will automatically associate it as homeschooling. So if you go out on the street to someone and they say, "Oh, where do your kids go to school?" and you say, "Oh, well, they're homeschooled," and then they automatically assume that they're in some sort of cyber school program. You know, they'll say to you, oh, how many hours a day on the computer do you get? Or do you like the free computer that you got? And, you know, how is it? How do they pay for your internet? And it's like, no, our kids aren't cyber schooled, they're homeschooled. And they kind of look at you like you're from another planet, because they're not really sure what that means. They automatically associate cyber schooling as homeschooling. And what is happening with that is that is actually kind of closing the opportunity for parents who might want to be taking their kids out of school, because if they think of homeschooling just as cyber schooling, you know, because again, it's something that's really popular, they're not really very aware of the entire world of homeschooling that they could possibly be checking into too. And we really want other people to experience, you know, what we've experienced with homeschooling, because it's just so much freer. It's just like, you know, like a big weight off of your chest, not having to answer to people all the time about your own kids. And we want other people to know what that's like. So when people automatically, you know, conflate cyber schooling with homeschooling, it's kind of, they're missing an opportunity to know what else could be in store for them. And now the second reason that a lot of homeschooling parents do not like when cyber schooling is considered homeschooling, and this honestly is probably the reason that would be the most popular, is because since, as I was talking earlier, cyber schoolers have to follow the laws of public school students, we have things that we as homeschoolers do not have to do. As I mentioned earlier, you know, the yearly standardized testing and keystones in Pennsylvania. And a lot of times, actually no, all the time, the cyber school rules are much stricter than what we as homeschoolers have. Even in Pennsylvania, which is considered a difficult state to homeschool in, I honestly don't feel that's true. I'm hoping my school district doesn't, you know, make me regret saying that, because I still didn't get my letter back from them yet this year. But anyway, it even in a stricter state to homeschool in, you still have so many more freedoms, as I said earlier, in the law than cyber schoolers do. So one thing that homeschoolers are afraid is going to happen is, since cyber schooling is so popular and that's what people look at, you know, they might say, hey, why is it that this group of homeschoolers has to do standardized testing every year and has to turn their papers in every week and has to sign on to a computer for a certain number of hours per day, and this group of homeschoolers doesn't have to do it? What happens is that line starts to get blurred, and it could potentially cause a problem that would call for stricter homeschool laws, which we do not want. Homeschool parents are typically nonconformists. We like to be independent. We accept responsibility for educating our own kids, and we think it's very important that we are the ones that are held responsible to that, and you know, we want to keep it that way. So when that line is blurred, you know, it makes us a little nervous, because we don't want to lose our rights. The homeschool pioneers, you know, they worked really, really hard to get us where we're at today, and we don't want to lose those rights just because there was a little bit of confusion over what cyber schooling is versus homeschooling. So anyway, I hope that that's clarified the issue for any of you who have had this question. I'm going to cough again. Oh my word. So anyway, if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I will get back to you as soon as possible. I know I'm backed up on comments. I've been working and sick and haven't gotten on. I will answer as soon as I can. Share this video. I would really, really love to get this out there, just so that people, again, can clear up any confusion that there is. If you haven't subscribed yet and you would like to see more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. And also, if you like my work, if you like what I do, I would love if you would check out my page on Patreon and see what I have for you there. And I hope you have a great day.